Alright, so I've been trying to upload a video about my entire collection of bonsai trees, but with the movie maker time limit, I couldn't figure it out, so I figured, you know what, I'll just live stream this and maybe upload it as a normal video later. So let me flip the camera around, and today what we're going to do is look at my entire collection. This is a Juniper procumbens, and it's a little bit overgrown. I'm going to have to cut back some of this foliage once the spring and summer comes. I've been kind of lazy and slacking off, but this is what is known as a feminine style tree. So what I'm going to do is keep the trunk kind of that thickness, but for what it is, it needs to get all this foliage reduced so that the trunk isn't out of proportion with all this foliage. Over here we have a Japanese black pine. It had kind of a fungal issue on it. I've cut off most of those needles, but it just gets those yellow bands around these needles, so I'm treating it with a fungicide. It looks pretty decent right now, but I'm just gonna have to stay on top of it now that we're going to the fall and winter time. Make sure that doesn't spread. Here we have Piccola Japanese umbrella pine. This is no good for bonsai material, but just because I like this species so much, I decided that I'm just going to keep it as a and here we have what is this, the Scots pine I styled earlier. I'm going to cut this bar branch off and kind of grow this into place. I see we have 6 people watching. For those that don't know, I just couldn't figure out the video editor for such a long video, so I'm just going to live stream my entire collection today, then upload this as a regular video later on. So there we have the Scots pine. Here we have a Douglas fir. Now the story behind this is kind of funny because I went to a bonsai show in July, and I went with a buddy of mine, and we were looking at the trees, and I saw this, and it was like $300, and he's like, whoa, maybe don't buy that one. It's kind of, kind of expensive. And I was like, yeah, you can't have them all, but this is a Yamadori Douglas fir. It has nice deadwood here, more deadwood back here, and just the way the trunk was kind of curved up, I figured, you know what, this is going to be good material. I just can't live without it. So 2 days later, I went back and I bought this tree. So that's about it for this corner. Over here, we have a bunch of garbage. Let me get into here. This is a Japanese white pine. I forget what cultivar it is. There's a tag here. It's the Kinpo, and this is like the only tree I've bought in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years that has died on me. So I don't know what it is about this particular cultivar. I actually tried it twice. This is the second one that's dying. It's on its way out. So I don't know. I have the refund policy is like a year, so I'm just gonna email them photos of this and show them, hey, this died, and maybe try it again next year with a replacement plant. Here I have what was this, the dwarf Alberta spruce I did a while ago. Since we're going into winter, it's not really growing right now, so kind of the same thing as it was before. Here we have a larch, and I forget which species of larch this is. Forgot which seeds sprouted, so I really like to know what cultivar and species I have, so I'm probably just honestly going to throw this one out. Here we have a blue rug juniper, which I bought for the foliage, not so much for the branch structure, because, I don't know, just looks kind of interesting with this blue foliage compared to most of the other green stuff. So we have that. We have this American cultivar of Ginkgo biloba. A little bit overpriced, but whatever. I want to plant this in the ground because it can thicken up pretty nice, and it gets like 3 to 4 feet tall. Nice branching on it. And especially with ginkgo, it's kind of hard to get stuff that's branching low to the ground, so I figured this would be a nice specimen for it. Here we have just a standard Mugo pine from Home Depot, $10. It's one of the low-growing varieties, but figured I'd buy it as nursery stock, maybe do like a cascade out of that. Here we have a maple I dug up from my yard. Don't remember, what it is because I never identified it in the first place. It's one of the maples that grow around here in Illinois. It has kind of nice round leaves, so I figured that would be interesting compared to all the Japanese maples I have. This is just some throwaway project when I recorded that, how to make a juniper bonsai video like a couple months ago in the summertime. This is the first run, and I broke one of the branches off. Then I taped it up with electrical tape and some of these zip ties, and it survived, but overall it just looked kind of trashy, so I figured I'm just going to record that video. I bought another one of these, and I just made a whole brand new juniper, so I'm probably just honestly going to throw this out. Here we have 2 spruce. I'm probably going to have to walk around there. There you can see my whole Sarracenia collection, which is doing pretty well. Haven't bothered to record a video on it, but got a lot of Sarracenia that are doing pretty good. You can see the Leucophila gets some nice color on it for the fall. But it's just kind of a whole mess because I went crazy and just bought everything that, I could think of for big breeding projects. So, I can talk about that later. And then here we have, I think that's a Norway spruce. It's kind of thin, but you can see there's a lot of buds on it. So with proper fertilization, this will be pretty vigorous next year. And then this is a Colorado blue spruce. And when I saw this at the nursery, I kind of just saw this tree growing on a cliffside. So I made a root over rock kind of thing for it. Here we have some other trees I'll show later. But we're going to go into this garage, absolute garbage dump. But got this at the fish store. And it was a really nice rock because everything I found before was just really smooth. We got nice crevices in here. We got this kind of hole in the side. But the only problem is for the orientation I wanted it, there was not really anything supporting it here. So I just cemented this rock to the base. And now we have a pretty decent kind of root over rock thing that we can kind of put this spruce towards the bottom, and it's kind of out of proportion because this is really close to the tree or close to the camera now. But what I'm going to do is, it's a little bit more in proportion. So just imagine that kind of shifted down to this area. And then the roots are going to cover this cement part over. And there's some nice moss growing on rocks in the forest. So I'll probably collect some of that. And we have kind of nice shelves where we can put that moss and kind of have this all grow and be more of a unified piece. But like I said, I had to cement this because I just didn't know what else to do with it. So again, that's a Colorado blue spruce, kind of an interesting variety. It seems to be naturally dwarfed. This is Yamadori, field collected material. So I don't know, it's interesting that it's kind of really dwarfed like that. So that's about it for this patio, and we'll move on to the next section over here. I guess we got some stuff over here. I feel bad I can't edit this, so it's going to be even longer than the original video I tried to upload, but whatever, I guess. Big bald cypress. This is a cultivar called Shawnee Brave because I love bald cypress, so I bought this one. I'm probably going to have to sink this into the ground so the trunk thickens up. I really want that triangular kind of big, massive trunk for a bald cypress. And the good thing with this one is that we have this kind of sprout coming off the side here, so we can very easily do a trunk chop kind of in this area and have a whole new tree growing off the side here. So that's the plan for that. Over here, ginkgo. This is a seed grown I grew about 3 years ago, and here, and of course that first branch. So I feel like, I'm trying to thicken up this trunk as much as possible. I ran out of room to plant stuff in the ground, but that should be, decent enough. I just wanted to be a little bit more thick. We'll chop that and have a decent ginkgo, but now that I bought that other dwarf ginkgo, I'm not really so concerned about this one. Then we have this oak. I got this from the forest preserve. They were kind of giving these away for free to replant native stuff. So oak is really kind of terrible for bonsai because it has really large leaves that don't reduce well. But of course, I'm low on room, so I just put it in a pot, and I don't know, maybe it'll get dwarf as the roots get cut and bound. I don't know, we'll see. This is a buckeye tree, and Peter Chan made a video about this, I think a few months ago. He called them the conker trees, and I thought this was no good because it's kind of has, thick stems, and they don't really wire well. You don't really have much back budding. But once it gets big and old, like some of the examples in his video kind of showed me that it is possible to turn this into something that looks relatively interesting. So then for this section, we have the foxwillow pines trees. This was the Japanese white pine, Pinus parviflora, which is kind of nice because I was obsessing over the white pines recently, and then I remembered, oh, I actually do have this one because I thought this was a Korean pine or something else. So as you can see, it defoliates some of the old needles for the winter, and I plucked most of those off, and you can see the new foliage is a lot healthier than that diseased old foliage. We don't have any more of that spotting on it. But I'll spray this with fungicide for the winter time anyways, just to make sure that doesn't spread. And originally I was thinking of turning this into big, long deadwood and just styling a tree from that. But I feel like most of my trees are kind of typical in appearance, so what I'm going to do is probably just chop that off, and then I can have kind of a triangle forming here. And what I'm going to do is wire this down to be a little bit more abstract. So we kind of have a triangle of foliage down there and extend the triangle kind of down here with an extremely drooping branch, and of course wire this one down. So that's my current plan for this one. Then we have an eastern white pine. This is a Pinus strobus. I figured I want, more of these white pines. I've just been obsessing with them. So we got this, and it seems to have a nice kind of dense amount of growth here. I want to plant it in the ground, and since it's young, we can keep it pruned back, so hopefully I'll get nice back budding on white pine. If you've seen my previous videos, the growth gets kind of leggy, but with something like this that's young, I feel like we can keep it pruned, we can have the back budding, and eventually develop a nice tree out of that. So this is AB's concolor. I forget what the common name for this is. I believe white fir. But AB's concolor, it has very rubbery needles, and they're this really blue color. So even if this doesn't turn into anything interesting, like it's got a thin trunk and it's grafted down here, which is kind of ugly, even if this doesn't turn into anything that's like super good bonsai material, I'll at least have this kind of just as a conifer in a container, just growing it to enjoy the species, not so much something that I can style artistically. And kind of the same thing with this one. This is a green star, Ceodopodes verticillata, similar to that previous one I showed you, the Japanese umbrella pines. This is just a larger cultivar, but it does stay a little bit, shorter and dwarfed. So again, this is kind of no good to style into anything because the branches are very brittle. It has very long internodes, but whatever. I really like the way that this plant looks. So I have that around. This, I don't know, I think this is it's some kind of a cultivar called Fire Chief, but I forget if that was Thuja or Arborvitae. But as the winter goes on, this whole thing turns bright orange, so I'll come back and probably do an individual video on that. Here we have the other foxwillows pines plant. It's the Colorado blue spruce Teton Tower cultivar, and it kind of had some of the branches that were cascading die off as it was recovering, but now that I've got it healthy again, we have nice, healthy growth, and it's just going to be a matter of time before some of these grow and elongate and droop down, and we can get our cascade blue Colorado spruce. Here we have a pond cypress. If eBay is to be believed, I bought some pond cypress seedlings, and we have that growing here. We have this juniper that I worked on for that one, how to make a juniper bonsai video, just letting it get pretty thick because I want those branches to be, thickened up at the bottom, so kind of overgrown. Also, so we have stuff that we can select at the top for possibly new branches. So just kind of living on the driveway here. This is a yew, and it is a hybrid yew between a European yew and a Japanese yew, and it's kind of a special cultivar because you can see the foliage is very round and short. It's very unusual for evergreen conifer. So it's, I think, Amersfoort. It's some kind of weird Dutch word, cultivar. I forget why it's named that. And it's probably not going to be good material again because it has this weird kind of very stiff growth on it. So I don't know what we can do with it, but just because the foliage is so interesting, I decided to buy it. And here we have the start of a new problem. Because I have so many evergreens, I started getting these Japanese maples because I want the fall color to kind of, interspace some of this later on once we get benches built. So here we have that coral bark maple I bought the other week. As you can see, it turns kind of yellow, and then that contrasts with this reddish colored stem. Here we have a Jordan full moon maple, which I don't really like. I like the full moon maples, but when I was looking around at Japanese maple cultivars recently, now that I got really interested in them, there's one called, I think, Aureum, the Japanese full moon maple Aureum cultivar, so I kind of want to swap this out. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, but, if I want to keep it or just swap it out because I'm running low on room, but I'll figure something out. And then here we have a blood good Japanese maple just from Home Depot, but it's that nice purple all year to kind of contrast with these. And so I want to get that one Japanese maple that turns bright orange because I feel like that'll be nice to have kind of a purplish red, yellow, and orange to kind of complete the Japanese maples. And then there's that other one I want. I forgot the name, but whatever. You'll probably see it one day as I inevitably buy way more plants than I should have. These are all the Japanese maples that were kind of growing invasive in that forest preserve that I dug up. I'm probably going to keep one of them just because I don't think this is a super interesting cultivar of Japanese maple. But the reason I dug this up is because as these get older, and I do pruning on some of these, I can just get the branches, cut them off that I don't need, and then just graft them to some of these and just propagate a bunch of the same cultivar. So I'll be able to, have a little bit more of those, and I don't know, probably keep some for myself, put some on eBay because I'm running low on room. But that's it for back here. I don't know if I can switch this camera around. All right, so I'm just going to go into the front yard because I have a lot of stuff I planted to grow and thicken the trunk. And of course, running low on room in the backyard, there was no room for it back there. So the final kind of group of pre-bonsai trees is over here in the front. So here we have that Japanese Mikawa black pine. Somebody asked me, is this cold hardy for Chicago? I don't know, but we're about to find out. I used to always put this in the garage for the winter time and it survived, so I'm assuming it's gonna be fine, just planted in the ground. The roots will stay insulated in the soil, so that's good. I don't really like this tree because it's kind of floppy. Maybe it can turn into something nice because we have a lot of branches kind of right here close to ground level. So you can probably just chop it there and have a nice shohin pine out of this. But then I kind of regretted tying this kind of into place because I figure if I just let this droop and fall over, we can kind of have a nice angled, kind of swirly, kind of serpent-like trunk to this instead of just something that's straight up and down. So I might take all this off and just kick it over and have a little bit more interest to the trunk. Here we have a really nice mugo pine. As you can see, the foliage stays dwarfed on this already, and we have lots of needles back here which all can potentially turn into new buds and then a new branch. The only problem with this tree was the trunk is a little bit too thin for me. So I planted it in the ground to thicken up that trunk, and I'm probably just gonna have to wire some of these branches soon because they're about the length I want them. So just to make sure the back budding is present for the future project. Then here we have a white cedar. Just a seedling, so of course threw it in the ground, threw some fertilizer on it so this thickens up over time. So once that's 3 or 4 times the size, I'll dig that up and turn it into a bonsai tree. Here we have Hinoki cypress. I don't really like them, but I think I got both of these as like those fairy garden plants for like $5 or at most $10 total. So I figured, I'll plant them in the ground, kind of give them room to grow and see what that turns into. Here we have a upright yew Hicksii. It's a hybrid Texas media, and I think that is the cross between a European and a Japanese yew. Very interesting conifer because it has those red berries. It's kind of like a modified cone. So the only problem with this is that I think it grows more upright. So I don't know, if it's going to be a problem to get some of these branches to grow horizontally, but we'll just kind of keep that in mind next year. See if we want to wire some of these into place before it gets too, too hard to manage. But that's the story with that. Here we have a Dawn Redwood. This is a different Dawn Redwood. And surprisingly, those videos that I recorded a couple of years ago about Dawn Redwood became pretty popular. That Dawn Redwood died a long time ago, but I got a new one because this is one of my favorite trees. This is a deciduous conifer. And what I did was I bought a seedling. So here we have this Dawn Redwood. This is the trunk thickness. Of course, this isn't good enough for me because Dawn Redwood grows very vigorously. So if we got this from like a seedling this size to this thickness in about 4 years, now that it's in the ground, it's probably going to, double in size any moment now. So nice, big, large project that I have. And of course, you can trunk chop these, and I already chopped this kind of secondary apex. And we have a third branch growing up here. So, eventually, it has nice branching close to the ground. So eventually that'll turn into something interesting. I don't know if this is a good cultivar though, because it already defoliated somewhat here. It seems to kind of just dry up these leaves and drop them. We have some of them turning orange like they should be, but I don't know, maybe it's just the cultivar. So, I don't know, whatever. We'll see what that Dawn Redwood turns into. I don't know if the foliage is super great on that one, but I'll probably find another Dawn Redwood cultivar that kind of gets better fall coloration and just style one with that. All right, reconnected for hopefully the last time. So this is the Japanese larch. It has blue needles on it, and I kind of was surprised. I didn't know it would get that kind of coloration on it. It's kind of sunburned because I didn't really water it this summer because I figured, oh, it's planted in the ground. It'll have enough water. Apparently not.